Am I wrong for paying for another bride's wedding dress but not my daughter's? My husband and I worked hard and managed to become financially secure adults after both of us grew up in poverty. We raised our children to work hard. We did not spoil them or provide them with a lavish life. As teens, they all had part-time jobs, but we did purchase them their own used cars, which they were required to maintain. We also paid for college and we paid for our oldest 2 kids' weddings. However, we were merely the ones paying and we did not provide any input or suggestions unless asked. The only thing we didn't pay for their weddings was our son's tuxedo and our oldest daughter's wedding dress. Our youngest daughter, Michaela, is engaged and we are paying for her wedding with the exception of her dress. She must buy her own wedding dress. Michaela invited her dad and I to watch her try on dresses with the bridal party. She found a beautiful dress in her budget, and we were so honored to have been allowed to take part in her finding the dress and seeing herself as a bride. Hey, I really like these parents. They sound really dope. While there, I complimented another bride on a dress she was wearing, and her mother and I struck up a conversation where I learned that the family was low income and both the bridegroom and the bride's parents had taken out loans to have a beautiful wedding. I 100% disagree with people who have to take out loans to have weddings. Don't have the wedding. Have a party in your house. Go hurrah, buy a cheap white dress from like Ross or something, but you should never take out loans. That's how this system destroys us because society has brainwashed us into thinking that you have to have this lavish lifestyle wedding. Why would you put yourself into debt over one night? Like, why? The bride is also plus sized, and I learned that she had been to 6 different stores and there had only been a few options for her size, and all of them had just been awful. The bride ended up falling in love with the last dress she tried on, but was heartbroken to learn that the consultant had misread the price tag and the dress was actually $1,000 over budget. And with alterations to make it her size, it was another $1,400. The bride took the dress off and said she tried to find something online. I grew up poor and I was also a chubby kid. I was bullied and I was very unhappy. I always wanted more, and in this bride I saw myself, and I didn't want her to have to settle for a dress that fit versus a dress that she loved. So while my daughter was changing, I asked the other bride if I could pay the difference on her dress. It was very emotional. We all held each other and cried. She accepted. See, that's such a nice gesture though. Like, that is really sweet. I very happily paid the difference on her dress. Her mother, herself, and I are now friends on Facebook, and my husband and I have been invited to the wedding, which we will gladly attend. I felt very honored to have been allowed to help this girl in a very small way, but being invited to her wedding was so unexpected and amazing. When Michaela found out about this, she threw a fit and said that I obviously had shown how I truly feel about her wedding and herself, and if I cared at all, I'd have paid for her dress too. She's now not speaking to me or her father, who didn't even have a hand in this, which is unfair. She has now uninvited us from the wedding. We're so hurt and confused. Was I an asshole?
Should I tell my mom that my stepdad is putting the moves on me? AKA her husband. Disclaimers are not my story time. My mom and I have always had a really good relationship. She's pretty much been my best friend all throughout my life. I was bullied heavily in school, so I always confided in my mom. I mean, I tell my mom everything, even about boys. When I was in high school, my parents got divorced. Right after the divorce, my mom had set her sights on this one guy. He lived in our neighborhood, was single, and had a lot of money. Now, you could say my mom wanted his money, or you could say that she fell in love with him. I'm not sure which one. They ended up getting married right when I turned 17. My mom and I moved into his house, and it was amazing. It was actually more like a mansion. He had a pool, a movie theater, and a tennis court. So my house was the house that all my friends would come to. And my mom was really happy, I could tell. But there were a few things that I didn't like about my new stepdad. For example, whenever my friends would come over, he would always try to hang out with us. First, I thought it was just really annoying. But after a year of this happening, I realized it was actually kind of gross. So I opened up to my mom and I told her that I didn't like him hanging around my friends. And my mom laid the hammer down. After that, he would not come around at all whenever my friends and I were downstairs. Here's where things start to get a little icky. When I turned 19, I could tell he was staring at me more and more. Part 2 is, should I tell my mom that my stepdad, her husband, is trying to hit on me? Disclaimer is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. When I turned 19 is when I started noticing that he would stare at me more and more. I usually would walk around the house in my bikini whenever I was gonna go in the pool. Sometimes I would wear shorts and crop tops around the house, or be in a sports bra and leggings whenever I was working out. But his staring clearly made me uncomfortable. So I literally had to change the way that I dressed. And I didn't want to tell my mom just because I thought maybe I was reading too much into it. Instead, I told my best friend. And when I told my best friend, she told me that I needed to be really careful around him. She told me I shouldn't even be alone with him in the house. I started to get really paranoid. One day, my stepdad asked me why I stopped dressing the way that I used to. Point blank, I said to him, well, you stare a lot and it makes me uncomfortable. The smile on his face turned into pure anger. Then he started calling me stupid and ignorant. He said that I was dumb for thinking that and that he was totally in love with my mom and that he would never ever see me that way. But he continued to stare at me. A few months later, we decided to have a party on my mom's birthday. Well, my stepdad got hammered, and when no one was looking, he sat down next to me and put his hand on my lap. That's when he said that he missed the way that I used to dress. And the look on his face was disgust. Part 3 is up. Should I tell my mom that my stepdad has been hitting on me, aka her husband? Disclaimer, it's not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. When he put his hand on my lap, I pushed him away and told him he was being disgusting. That's when he grabbed my hand and told me that there was nothing wrong with him appreciating my beauty. And remember, we're at my mom's birthday party. I went over to my mom with the intention to tell her, but she was having so much fun and it was her birthday, I didn't want to spoil it. For the rest of the night, I had to avoid him. He would follow me everywhere and try to grab my hand. I finally went up to my bedroom and locked myself in there. A few days after the party, he came up to me and said, I need to apologize to you. And I said, what for? That's when he said, you know why. Then he told me he made reservations at a really nice restaurant for us to go to. And of course, I said no. That's when he told me that we were both adults, that we could hang out together when my mom wasn't around. I said no, and I've been avoiding him since then. But I think avoiding him is doing the opposite. He now started sending me gym selfies. I told him he needed to stop, and he said he just wanted to send me his progress so that I could be proud of him. Ew, never. I decided that I should move out, and I've started looking for my own apartment. I thought maybe I should wait until I move out to tell my mom, or maybe not tell her at all. No, this is gonna break her heart and flip her world upside down. He has a really good life with him, but I don't think that's worth losing me, right? How should I tell my mom? My biggest fear is that she doesn't believe me. What should I do?
Am I wrong for revealing my pregnancy during my sister-in-law's wedding? I know it sounds bad, but hear me out. I, 27 female, found out I was pregnant about a month ago. I was planning to tell my husband, but I changed my mind after I wanted to tell everyone and excite my husband and family at the same time. Though I was honestly a little lazy and didn't want to plan an entire dinner or event to reveal my pregnancy. I knew my husband would be suspicious of why I suddenly wanted to host a dinner party. The only other event that everyone was going to attend was my sister-in-law's wedding. Now, personally, I don't like my sister-in-law. She's always on social media with 1,000 pictures every 10 seconds, flaunting her lavish lifestyle with her fiance's money. You just sound like a hater, and you want to use her event for your own benefit. Hater. My husband and I aren't wealthy, so I thought maybe revealing my pregnancy would mean I can get even about all those times she bragged about her expensive new purse. You're using your pregnancy as a leverage? It's dumb. The day of the wedding arrives and everything is just beautiful. I was honestly kind of amazed at how incredible it looked. I tried to find a nice time to reveal my pregnancy, but it was honestly much harder than I expected. Flash forward to when we were taking pictures and I gathered everyone up to make an announcement. I ecstatically announced my pregnancy. People like you are the worst kind of people. Oh, I don't like you. You were for sure the asshole. I don't have to read any more of this to say that though, but I'll keep going. But instead of getting congratulations, hugs, and kisses by the guests, all I got was kicked out. Good, you deserve to be. Everybody was whispering under their breath, but it was obvious to everyone that what I did was messed up. I don't understand why everyone was so negative about the situation. The most shocked about it was clearly my sister-in-law. She goes berserk, screaming about how I was always jealous of her and how I just couldn't keep help but ruining the best day of her life. I agree with her. Like, you literally said it from the beginning, your intention was bad. I was too shocked to make a sarcastic remark. She was screaming for me to get out. My husband just grabbed my hand and took us to our car. In the car, my husband lost his temper, and that's why I would ever possibly do such a thing. I hesitated to respond, but my husband sure didn't. He called me a massive prick and said I shouldn't have done what I did, but I don't understand. Every time my sister-in-law brags directly to my face, no one says anything to her. When we got home, I checked my sister-in-law's Instagram, and it was filled with exaggerated posts and way too many cringy emojis. You're a hater! I honestly feel kind of bad now that I thought about it, but I don't think I'll be satisfied until I get a professional response to my dilemma. So, am I the asshole? 100% for sure. Not only did you mess up your sister-in-law's wedding, that's your husband's sister. Like, your selfishness not only ruined it for yourself, but for your spouse. Like, be the bigger person in this situation. There are some times when it's okay to be petty, but this wasn't one of it.
Is it okay that my boyfriend is trying to convince me to let him do the dirty with my cousin? My boyfriend used to be my sneaky link before we made it official. At the beginning, neither of us wanted a relationship, but the more we kept hooking up, the more we wanted to be with each other. So naturally, we hung out all the time, and he asked me to be his girlfriend. And of course, I really wanted him to ask me, but I would never bring it up myself. So when he finally did, I said yes. But here's the thing. My boyfriend asked me if we could have an open relationship when we started. At first, I said no, but then I thought about it some more. If he wants to see other girls and cheat on me, he will. And because of the way we started, I knew what he was like. So I thought to myself, it's probably better to just have an open relationship than to be wondering if he's cheating on me. So after a few weeks of me asking him, I said yes. But I laid down some rules. If he was gonna hook up with somebody else, he needed to tell me. He kept telling me that it was better to just not talk about it, but I told him I wanted to know the truth. A few months into the relationship, everything was fine. According to him, he was not hooking up with anybody. And I know that I wasn't either, even though the option was there if we both wanted to. This is around the time that my cousin came home to visit from college. Growing up, everyone thought that her and I were identical twins. We really do look so much alike. We both have the same exact body type, pretty similar features. We both have long black hair, and we even dress the same. So it's natural that people thought we were sisters. I told my cousin about my boyfriend and she wanted to meet him. So I had a dinner at my place. As soon as my boyfriend saw her, he basically started drooling. It made me so angry, but I had to keep my cool. Throughout the dinner, my boyfriend kept complimenting her. He talked about how much her and I looked alike and how it would be any guy's fantasy to watch us do it. My cousin was super uncomfortable, so I asked him to stop doing that. Part 2 is is it okay that my boyfriend is trying to convince me to let him do the dirty with my cousin? Because we have an open relationship, he feels like he can do certain things in front of me. For example, like flirting with other women in front of me. While we were having dinner with my cousin who was visiting, he kept making comments about how hot she was and how her and I look exactly like twins. My cousin was clearly super uncomfortable, so I asked him to stop, which he did. That's when my boyfriend dragged me into our bedroom and asked me if he could do it with her. I said absolutely not. One of the rules in our open relationship is that we can't choose anybody we already know. He told me that he technically did not know my cousin. I told him family was off limits. He asked me to think about it. I drove my cousin home, and that's when she she told me that my boyfriend was really hot. And I was shocked. I thought she was uncomfortable at dinner. I pulled the car over and asked her if she was interested in him. That's when she said she overheard our conversation. Yep, she heard when my boyfriend was asking me if he could do it with her. She started to laugh and told me that it was okay, and that she wouldn't tell my parents. Then she told me that an open relationship is always a bad idea, and that nothing good will come of it. I asked her again if she was interested in him, and she said maybe. She says, you should just let us do it. Part 3 is up. Is it okay that my boyfriend is trying to convince me to let him hook up with my cousin? That's when my cousin tells me you should just let us do it. I looked over at her and I said, are you crazy? And she said, if you guys already have an open relationship, what's the difference? I told her I wasn't going to be comfortable with her and my boyfriend doing it, and that she needed to get that idea out of her head. And she started trying to do reverse psychology on me. She said if I didn't let them do it, that he was going to eventually resent me, and that he would see me as the bad guy, and that he'd probably start looking for other girls. I could not believe that my own cousin was trying to do that to me. I started to cry and I asked her if she loved me at all. She then hugged me and says, of course I love you. This is the best thing for your relationship. Part of me started to actually believe what she was saying. I thought maybe he will resent me if I don't let them do it. After that, I didn't talk to my cousin for a few days. During that time, all my boyfriend did was ask me if he could see her again. I made the mistake of telling him that my cousin was down, and then he started pushing even more. He promised me he would only do it with her once, and that nothing would change between him and I. Here's the other thing. There's a guy who's always asked me out on dates, but I always say no. He contacted me and told me that he was finally single and that he really wants to see me. I told my boyfriend that if he was going to do it with my cousin, then I could do it with this guy. That's when my boyfriend said no, because I had feelings for this guy. He's arguing that he has no feelings for my cousin, and that if I do it with this other guy, it would be like cheating because I do have feelings for him, which is true. I don't know what to do, and I am so confused. I could just go behind my boyfriend's back, but part of me feels guilty. What should I do?
If you are in the passenger seat of a car and the driver is maybe a little befuddled, confused, stressed, lost, and they say to you, is anybody on my right? What do you do? How do you respond to that situation? What do you do? What do you say? Pause the video, comment, and come back. Because I was just in that situation. I was befuddled. I was lost and stressed to no end. And I turned to my friend and I said, hey, is anybody on my right? And she said, I don't know. Anyway, I asked him, is it even legal to own a wallaby in this state? And then we nearly got taken out by a Jeep because she didn't help me and I needed help. And I'm embarrassed to say I got yelly, okay? I was like, what is wrong with you? Would it have been that hard to check my blind spot? And then I thought, whoops, that is not how you talk to humans. And so I immediately brought it back down. I said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have yelled at you. I think you need a kangaroo permit to own a wallaby in the state of Washington. And she was like, that's what I told him. And I was like, can you just acknowledge though that was a weird thing that you just did, that what you just, that's not customarily how that's handled. One time a guy asked me on a date to play racquetball, which if you don't know what it is, it's the game where you hit the ball against the wall and then your opponent hits the ball against the wall and then I think that's how it works, okay? But basically you're hitting a ball against a wall. And he asked me to play it with him on a date. And I said, I'd be happy to go, but I've never played racquetball before and I can't catch, throw, or kick a ball. And he was like, don't worry, you'll get it. And I think sometimes people think that I'm faking humility and I'm really being honest about how horrible I am at things. And he took me to play racquetball. He signed me in as a guest at his gym. And then pretty quick after we got in there, he was trying to teach me how to serve. And I don't know how I did this, but I hit the ball straight down. It went straight up to the ceiling and broke the light. And I was like, should we go tell someone? And he said, no, we should run. And we just left the gym. And then he asked me out on a second date, surprisingly, and he said, do you play tennis? And I was like, no, I said I can't catch, throw, or kick a ball. And he was like, I'll teach you how to play tennis. So he took me back to his gym. They didn't know that we were the ones who destroyed the light in the racquetball room. We went on to one of the tennis courts, and he kept hitting tennis balls past my head. He was like, you'll get the next one. You'll get the next one. And I was like, I told you I'm bad at this. And then after like an hour of hitting tennis balls past my head, we ended the date, and he never spoke to me again.
Story time about how my mom made me shave my hair off. So a little background information, I was 13 years old and in 7th grade, and I had just moved to a new school this year because my grandma was really sick and my family and I needed to take care of her. And for like the first 2 months, I had a big problem making friends. Until I met my best friends, Ashley and Nicole. Ashley was super sweet and Nicole was kind of a bitch. And I was in between, so we kind of all balanced each other out. But fast forward to later on in the year, we met this one girl named Kelly. And I'm not gonna lie, she was super nice but really annoying. She would always try to talk to us, always try to hang out with us. She was literally stuck up our asses 24/7. And the one day Ashley convinced Nicole and I to have a sleepover with Kelly and her. So we say yes, and Nicole, Ashley, and I are all texting in the group chat. Nicole goes, well, I'm not going to promise that I'm going to be nice to her. And she actually said that we were going to play a prank on her. And that's when Ashley bailed because she didn't want to be a part of it. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why my mom made me shave my hair off. So like I said, Ashley bailed because she did not want to be a part of Nicole's evil plan to bully this girl. So fast forward, Nicole and I go over to Kelly's house and I start to feel really bad because Kelly's actually super nice and she wasn't as weird as I thought she was. Fast forward, Kelly's sleeping and Nicole comes over to me and she's like, hey, come to the bathroom with me. So I get up and I go to the bathroom and Nicole pulls out Nair. And I asked her what the hell she's gonna do with that. And she was like, oh, I've seen some people do pranks on YouTube. You know, they put it in somebody's shampoo bottle and then it makes them lose their hair. So since I'm the only one who thinks logically, I'm like, Nicole, you cannot fucking do that. And she's like, oh, don't be such a baby. This shit doesn't even work anyways. All the videos that I watched, people only lost like 4 strands of hair. Which made no sense because why the fuck were we gonna do it then? Anyways, fast forward, I go to sleep. I wake up in the morning and my mom comes to get me. Like for part 3. Part 3 about why my mom made me shave my hair off. So like I said, Nicole put the Nair in her shampoo and I went to sleep. I decided I was not going to be a part of this little plan. And I wake up in the morning, my mom comes and picks me up and Ashley's texting me saying, hey, was Nicole nice to Kelly? And I told her about what she did. And Ashley was like, oh my god, that's so fucked up. Like, I'm gonna tell Kelly. And I was like, yeah, I was gonna tell her, but I don't want to get Nicole in trouble. So fast forward to dinner time, my mom gets a call from Kelly's mom. And she was like, Kelly took a shower earlier. She's losing her hair. And Nicole texted Kelly saying that your daughter's the one who put the shit in my daughter's shampoo. So my mom's like, well, how do you know it was my daughter? And she was like, Nicole also said that she saw the Nair bottle in your daughter's backpack. So my mom runs up to my room. She finds the Nair bottle in my stuff, which obviously Nicole put there. But my mom wouldn't listen to me, so eventually she sat me down in the kitchen and shaved my hair.
Imagine winning a $30 million lottery and then going missing. On November 15, 2006 in Plant City, Florida, Abraham Shakespeare and his coworker Michael Ford are on an overnight delivery route to Miami. Abraham gives Michael 2 $5 bills and tells his coworker to grab him some lotto tickets. He grew up in poverty and dropped out of school early. He does all kinds of jobs from fruit picker, dishwasher, and garbage man. He was earning around $8 an hour in these jobs. Well, one of his 2 lotto tickets ends up winning him a $30 million jackpot. However, he's a humble man and even gave his last $3 to a homeless man just before he won the lottery. He takes the lump sum instead of the annual payment and ends up with around $12 million after taxes are taken out. His generosity stays the same. He gives $1 million to his stepfather and $250,000 to each of his stepsisters. With his new money, he buys himself a mansion, a nice car, and a Rolex from a pawn shop. However, about 3 months later, he gets sued by his coworker Michael Ford, who got the lotto tickets. Ford claims that the lotto tickets were his and Abraham stole them. He states that since he purchased the lotto tickets, the money, or whatever is left of it, belongs to him. In court, just after 1 hour, the jury finds it in Abraham's favor. Michael Ford appeals the verdict and the case goes on for months. During all of this, Abraham realizes that he's been giving one too many handouts and is losing his lotto money at a frightening rate, which is starting to get to him. In October of 2008, he meets with a woman named Dee Moore, who is a self-made financial advisor. She offers to help him with his finances and starts collecting on the many loans he had given to people. This included a $63,000 loan he had given to his barber named Gregory Smith. He had given Smith a loan, but only after Smith insisted on signing a contract stating he would pay him back. One day, Abraham doesn't show up in court for the ongoing trial with Michael Ford, and no one can find him. On November 24, 2009, he's officially announced missing. A month passes with no new information until 2 days after Christmas, his mother gets a call from someone claiming to be him. However, his mom knows for a fact that it isn't him. Who would call a mother and expect to impersonate her grown child? This is when the family starts to suspect foul play. Crime Fanatic Friday Part 2. Imagine winning a $30 million lottery and then going missing. Police trace the call. They find that it came from the barbershop owner Gregory Smith, who owed Abraham Shakespeare $63,000. When police bring Smith in, he says that he was forced by a woman named Dee Moore, Abraham's financial advisor, to make the call. She had been pressuring Smith to pay back the loan or he'd lose everything, including his barbershop. She told him that if he called Abraham's mom pretending to be him, that she'd forgive his debt. She also stated that Abraham had left town and was tired of being hounded by people for his money. However, phone records show that Abraham stopped making any phone calls months prior. He had stopped calling and switched strictly to texting, and only to Moore. However, the thing is that Abraham never learned to read or write. So how was he doing this? Police set Smith up with a wire to record the conversations he has with Moore when they meet. During their conversations, she admits that she believes Abraham is dead and it was the doing of a crazy drug dealer from Miami named Ronald who threatened her. One day, she shows up with a handwritten letter and asks Smith to deliver it to Abraham's mother. In the letter, Abraham tells his mother that he's not coming back in fear of being arrested and scolds her for not recognizing his phone back when he called. Smith knows Abraham didn't write the letter because he knows that he can't read or write. When police take a closer look into Dee Moore, they find a long history of fraud and lying. By the time Abraham went missing, all of his assets had been transferred to her company. When investigators bring her in for questioning, she stated that she paid him in cash for all of his assets and shows a video of Abraham stating that he's going to flee to California because he's fed up with people asking for money. In January of 2010, Dee Dee asks Gregory if he knows anyone who'd be willing to confess to killing Abraham for a price. Gregory states he has a cousin going to prison for 25 years and for enough cash, he might just do it. She agreed to meet his cousin, aka an undercover cop, and offers him $50,000 for the confession, but to make it believable, Smith needs to know where the body and the murder weapon is. A few days later, Dee Dee gives him a gun and takes him to the house that she owns. She states that Abraham is under a concrete slab, and that's when Gregory states he'll be back later that night with his cousin to get the body. Police get a search warrant for the property and then question Dee Dee again. She switches up her whole story. She states that 2 drug dealers came into her office demanding $200,000 and that Abraham owed them. Ronald finds Dee Dee's gun in the safe, shooting him twice in the chest and threatened to kill her if she spoke about it to anyone. However, she's a known liar and investigators can't believe what she says. When they search the concrete slab, Abraham isn't there. They reach out to Dee Dee's ex-husband and he states that she had him bury a hole in the backyard back in April, right when Abraham disappeared. On January 28, 2010, they find human remains and determine that it's Abraham Shakespeare. They find 2 shots in his chest being the cause of death. They arrest her and charge her with first-degree murder. On December 10, 2012, she's sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole plus 25 years for possessing a gun in the course of a violent felony. Am I the asshole for leaking the notebook in which a person described everyone they slept with in detail? I, female 19, live in university halls. Our student village halls are houses with 5 people each one having a single room, with 4 other flatmates, one of whom is Sierra, also female 19. Each one of us have our own room and we have a communal kitchen with kind of living room area inside the kitchen. It's exam season and after that, we are done with our year and we're moving out. All year, Sierra has been a party girl. I'm not judging. It's totally normal to party in your first year and legal drinking age here is 18 where I am. I would be lying if I said I didn't party. And she's been experimenting with a lot of her sexuality. Again, no judgment. But she's also been very vocal about having a notebook in which she writes down every one-night stand or sexual encounter she had and how she was planning to make it into a book after she graduates. She told a lot of people that she writes down names, body details, and details of the encounter. Everyone pretty much ignores her when she's talking about it because we just find it cringy. Well, the other day, I was home alone. Sierra left for her exam, and I went into the kitchen to grab myself a cup of coffee and noticed a notebook on the table. It looked like one of mine, and I was studying in the kitchen the night before, so I grabbed it thinking that I must have left it. Oh boy, was I wrong. Turns out it was Sierra's infamous sex notes notebook. It was a train wreck. I know I should have stopped reading, but I couldn't put it down. It was so much worse than anyone thought. It was details of every encounter with scores and disparaging comments about people she slept with. She was rating their bodies, commenting on their skills, smells, etc. Every single detail about the encounter, comparing them to others, etc. I took photos of every single page and left the notebook where it was and I didn't mention it. I edited some photos, removed the names, and posted it anonymously to a Facebook group that we shared with some people. It blew up all over campus and Sierra got a lot of hate for this. Well, she ended up figuring out who it was that leaked it and she blew up at me, calling me a bunch of names, threatening me with legal action, etc. And she reported me for bullying to uni authorities. Now, in the aftermath of her figuring it out, I'm sitting here wondering if I was really the asshole for posting the photos of her notebook. So, am I the asshole for making it public?
My mind is always on rewind. I've lost my sense of time. Where's my frame to hide? Here by this night, has stars all over the sky. It lights my beauty inside. Oh, what a beautiful life here. This time I know where I have to put myself fitting down this road. I'm a diamond made necklace cause it's me that I chose. And I'm nobody.
Storytime about how my boyfriend's ex is threatening to have me raped. This girl is so crazy, I'm actually scared of her. My boyfriend and I started dating 3 months ago. Everything started when we made it official on Instagram. But here's the thing, my boyfriend never told me that he had a crazy ass ex. He just told me that she was intense. But as soon as he posted about me on his Instagram, she followed me on 3 separate accounts and started stalking my Instagram. That very same day, I started getting these weird, ominous text messages. For 2 weeks straight, this girl pretended to be another guy. And this guy was basically saying that he knew where I lived, and that he knew what car I drove, where I worked, and that he wanted to see me in person so that he could profess his love to me. After about a week of getting those messages, I showed him to my boyfriend. And that's when this man tells me that he needs to confess something. That his ex-girlfriend before me is crazy and that she has been stalking him for 6 months. And that the person behind those messages was probably her. He told me to ignore the messages and that she would eventually stop. But then I started getting messages from another account, and these messages were way more aggressive. They sent me a picture of me walking my dog in the park, and that they wanted to kidnap me. Of course I went to the police. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how my boyfriend's crazy ex is threatening to have me raped. After 2 weeks of her pretending to be other people and sending me crazy messages, I finally went to the police. That's when the police told me that there was no way of actually knowing if she was the one that sent the messages, and that there was no actual crime committed because she hadn't hurt me physically. Okay. That's when I forced my boyfriend to tell me what had happened between them. So apparently my boyfriend and her had dated for 2 years on and off. She wanted to get married, and my boyfriend said yes eventually, but she took that as him saying yes, and she even started planning a wedding. When she started planning the wedding, my boyfriend told her that she was crazy. And yes, he used the word crazy. He broke up with her and abandoned her. So I see why she would be really upset, but why is she taking it out on me? That's when I told my boyfriend he needed to tell her to leave me alone. He called her right there in front of me, and she acted like she had done nothing. She completely denied that she was the one sending the messages. 20 minutes after they hung up, I got an email, and the email was filled with disturbing images of women being essayed. And at the bottom of the email it said, "This is gonna happen to you." I was terrified. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how my boyfriend's crazy ex is threatening to have me raped. That's when I saw the email that was filled with disturbing images of women being essayed. And at the bottom it said that it would happen to me. Of course I showed my boyfriend the email. Then he told me to put on my shoes because we were gonna go to his ex's house. I was terrified. We get to his ex's house and knock on her door. She opens the door and instantly hugs us. Then she proceeds to act like a friend. He showed her the emails and all the messages and she flat out denied it. And get this. Then she says that someone is trying to set her up and that she's not crazy enough to do something like that. We finally left her house and for a few days I didn't get any messages. Until the messages started up, and even worse this time. It was from that same account before. The messages said that they would kidnap me and do stuff to me in their car, and that I would never know who it was because they'd be wearing a mask. For the next 5 days, the messages continued. It got to the point where I wasn't even leaving my house. My boyfriend and family had to accompany me everywhere. My boyfriend and family are both scared. I want to expose her so badly, but what if she does something to me? What if she hired some strange guy to follow me and kidnap me and do stuff to me? Or what if she does something to me herself? I'm terrified. What should I do?
Am I the asshole for refusing to grieve with my wife after my aunt's passing? I, 35 male, am married to Jess, 26 female. We dated for 2 years and have been married for 1 now. Most of my family has passed away, but I had one aunt from my mother's side. My aunt Jill took an active role in raising me when my mother was unable or unwilling, which was often. I got the news that my aunt Jill passed away and was in shock. I told Jess, who was sympathetic at first, and told her I wanted to be alone. I went to my room and at some point Jess knocked on the door that I needed to talk about it. I said I appreciated it but just needed to be alone. She then said I was an emotional black hole, slammed my door shut, and literally stomped away. Am I the asshole for refusing to grieve with my wife after my aunt's passing? For the next 2 hours, every 10 to 15 minutes or so, Jess would open my door abruptly and half shout asking if I was ready to be an adult. I grew impatient until I finally stood up and went out for a walk. When I got back an hour later, the chain was locked on our front door, which we never use. I repeatedly knocked and pushed the doorbell until Jess said that she'd only let me in if I agreed to talk about what happened. I said no when Jess walked away, but eventually she unlocked it because I kept pounding on the door and she didn't want me to embarrass her in front of the neighbors. She's now furious at me, saying I'm not really grieving and need to let her in on my feelings. Am I the asshole for telling a neighborhood runner I would not be leashing my dog? We live in the country suburbs where the neighborhood is surrounded by farmland. The neighborhood is also brand new and still building houses. So we have a golden who is incredibly well trained and walks no more than 3 feet ahead of us or beside. We were walking toward the fields to play fetch and a man started running towards us. He stops a few feet away and asked us to leash our dog. We said no thank you, and he said, what if I was afraid of dogs? What if I was allergic? I responded, well then you shouldn't be sprinting towards an unleashed dog. He of course didn't like that answer. Am I the asshole for telling a neighborhood runner I wouldn't leash my dog? He said, what if I was afraid of dogs? What if I was allergic? I said, well then you shouldn't be sprinting towards an unleashed dog. He didn't like the answer, and I explained to him we are essentially in the country and he is trained to be off leash. And it's very clear that he would never hurt anybody. He's a stranger who is raising his voice and our dog hasn't reacted whatsoever. He told me that I must be having a bad day, and I calmly said, no, not at all. I told you no, and we won't be putting him on a leash, and you're not getting your way. He then threatened calling HOA, and I laughed and told him to take my picture while he's at it, and I'll give him my address. Am I the asshole for encouraging my ex-husband to take a DNA test and potentially destroying his family? Me and my ex-husband James tried for 7 years to have a baby, and James didn't like to go to the doctor to solve fertility things. He even encouraged me not to have annual checkups at the gynecologist. He blamed me for being infertile and that I was unable to have our children. We broke up after he accused me of being a sterile bitch. The plot twist is that after meeting my current husband and we started trying, I decided to go to the hospital and check out my fertility problem. To my shock, everything is healthy and I could have had a child for years probably. The doctor pointed out the possibility of James's infertility.